Morning.
Morning.
It's beautiful out there.
Uh-huh.
All right. These are my notes. I had this really great idea that I was going to do a PowerPoint presentation.
But you'll be able to see it.
If I see anything really cool on here, I want everybody to see it. All right. So, spiritual warrior. What I want to do today is I want to create a feeling. I don't like have a, cogent talk. What I want to do is create a feeling of a warrior based on my own experience being a Marine, and how that informed my spiritual path when I started to have a spiritual awakenings. I had always thought that when I would have a spiritual awakening, it would be all peaceful and blissful and and then my shadow says, "Oh, that's what you thought, huh?" So, subheading for this today is what triggers the spiritual awakening process? And I would say in a nutshell, adversity. Adversity.
I think Howard Beale said anger.
Another form of adversity.
What, Aaron?
Howard Beale, I think, was the movie The Network.
Yeah.
Anger.
Oh, yeah.
First, you gotta get mad.
I've had all I can take and I can't take anymore. God.
Yeah.
So I chose and I asked Don to speak today because in just a few days is Veterans Day. And the day before Veterans Day is the birthday of my beloved Marine Corps, November 10th, 1775. Ton Tavern, Philadelphia. The Marine Corps started in a pub.
That's befitting.
And we've been drunk ever since.
So you're saying the Marine Corps is basically Irish?
It works. It works. We had a toast. And it's a very Irish toast. It was, may we get what we need, may we get what we want, may we never get what we truly deserve. Very Irish, very Marine Corps. So I want to dedicate today to veterans everywhere, to my beloved Marine Corps, and to you guys, because we're all warriors here. Which is why I'm sitting here and not standing there, because I'd rather be in the fighting hall with you.
Wow.
Oh, I have a picture I wanted to show you. It's what people think a spiritual awakening is like versus what it's actually like. Oh God, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
This is what I thought it was going to be like.
This is what
Oh God, I'm really not crazy. Maybe
The reality is.
Oh, yeah. Probably all had a few of those.
We had a few
Oh,
days.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those treasured moments.
It would be so much easier if I was just looking on the screen.
It's more interactive.
I had a day on ayahuasca just All right. So, when I got out of the Marine Corps is when I decided to start meditating. But let me tell you about the Marine Corps and adversity. So, first I was in the Army, because I went in the Army first. I was 17 years old. I joined the Army. I actually enlisted the day I turned 17. My parents,
Signed off on you.
they signed off on me because they were sick of my shit, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. And did a tour in the Army, got out, thought, God, I'm glad that's over with.
How many years?
I did 3. Got out, I was out for 8 months. And I'm like, man, it really sucks being a civilian. The transition was difficult, and I thought, you know what, when I was a little kid, I remember seeing a sign, maybe you can be one of us, you know, the few, the proud, and I'm like, that's what I need a challenge. So I re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. You know, I had all these ideals in my head about what that would be like. And it wasn't anything like it. It was what it was. I should have known better because I'd already been in the Army, and you know, they're a lot different, but they're not that different. So I joined the Marine Corps, and I volunteered to be an infantryman
Oh.
because
Go right to the ground.
every Marine's a rifleman, right?
Yes.
And if I'm going to be a ground pounder, I'm going to be in it. And what they gave me. Steve's a Marine too, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Are you a Marine? See?
Not anymore.
Anyway.
So I get to infantry school. Well, first of all, some things I learned in boot camp is everybody can be broken. I got broke. But some of the really valuable things I learned beyond that is, I said that adversity leads to spiritual awakening, but it also leads you to, it's kind of like spiritual awakening. It shows you who you are. So for me, it's not so much that I joined the Marine Corps or was a Marine. I'd still say I am because it's still in my head. It's that I got to serve with such great people. And I had this one guy, he was my squad leader. I was his fire team leader. We were in the first squad, it's in boot camp, and we're out learning how to be Marines. And it's tough, and every night we'd be talking, we'd have fire watch, so we'd be walking around, guarding our bivouac area. You remember that. And he'd say to me, effing Lurtsema, that's me, Lurtsema. I'm not swearing today. I'll try that too. I don't know if I'm gonna get through tomorrow. And I'd say to him, dude, you have to, because if you can't make it, I won't make it either. I'm counting on you. And the next morning I'd be like, I don't think I can make it through tomorrow. And he'd say, dude. So we had each other's back. And I also want to call out my drill instructor, a fellow named Sergeant DeBoer. You have that drill instructor that you will never forget until the day you die. Because after you've given up on yourself, he's the one putting his size 10 right there behind to keep you going. And his voice sounded like a demon. It did, because it'd get frog voice. And it'd sound like, okay, ladies. We're going to do push-ups till I get tired.
You have females in your company?
No.
No. We were considered.
As part of the patriarchy, we were weak, right? There were less nice ones too. And we'd end up doing several hundred push-ups. And you'd do a bunch of push-ups and you'd do rounds of 50. And then it'd say, have we learned? Yes, sir. What have we learned? Loyalty and discipline, sir. No, we haven't, because Private somebody, it would be, Private Daniels. I remember Private Daniels. He got called on a lot because he's got his knees on the ground. He just killed the whole platoon, starting over from one. So, so by the end of boot camp, we got up to like 550 push-ups. None of us could do 550 push-ups. I got to where I could do about 300. But 550, no, and when he'd be walking this way, I'd have my knees on the ground. And then I'd be watching him, and we'd all be watching him. And then down there, they would be like, yeah, we're doing push-ups. And then he'd turn around and we'd be back, yeah, we're doing push-ups. So adversity makes you intelligent too. For survival, to survive. I got 103-degree fever out on bivouac during this time. And we had to go on a 10-mile hump at night. That's the hike with all our gear. And I had 103-degree fever. And I was whining to myself about it. Because I talked to the drill instructor and he said, suck it up, Buttercup. So there we go, and I'm whining to myself about it. And then I made a decision that I will not quit. I will just keep going because what else could I do? And so we get going and we get up there, and my buddy, he's like, you gotta keep going, because I don't know if I can make this. I'm tired. We're several days into this now. We got 10 miles up a mountain with the 80-pound packs on it, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll keep up with you. And I'm like, so we make it back. And they put me in the hospital the next day because I was sick, but I made it back. And I learned in adversity, never quit. And it wasn't for me that I didn't quit. It was for the rest of the team. And the rest of the team didn't quit because we wanted to take care of each other. So that's the feeling of a warrior to me, is we take care of each other. And then I got out of boot camp, I got out of infantry school, went to infantry school. After boot camp, infantry school was just learning the job. It wasn't that hard. But they gave me a law, which is a shoulder-fired rocket. And my job with the shoulder-fired rocket is to blow up a bunker. And I'm out there, we're in a war game, and I got my cool law, and I'm gonna pretend to blow up the bunker. And I had this realization that if I was the guy in the bunker, this is the first guy that I'd take out because he's the one that's gonna get me first. And I'm like, this is a bad job for me. I don't like this job. So I immediately volunteered for recon, which is reconnaissance, which is, the Marine Corps doesn't have a special operations group, but it's the functional equivalent of being in special operations. So I'm like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. I'll be elite. Yeah, me. Yeah. I was young. What can I say? Somebody's got to do it. And I was gonna show a video of that, but I thought that was too ego and showy off, so I'm not gonna do that. But there was a day, it was the last day, 12 weeks. We started with 85 people, we were down to about 36. So half the people dropped out by the last day for a lot of reasons. Medical reasons, their head wasn't in the game anymore, they couldn't swim well enough and almost drowned. The first day they had you swim underneath the Olympic pool at the bottom all the way across, and if you come up, you fail. So that's the first day. That weeded out 20 people probably. And a lot of people pass out at the other end because most people can't swim that far underwater. So you just make a decision, am I gonna quit or am I gonna keep going? Everybody who decided to keep going got to survive it to the next day. And that was the easiest day. There was a sign, I'll never forget this, and I didn't understand what it meant until the end of the day. It said, if you're still conscious, you quit. And I'm like, wow, okay, now I know what that means. So then the last day, to this day, the hardest day of my life that I can remember, maybe it wasn't, we'd been awake for 48 hours, last day of school. This is graduation day for this course. And we assaulted a village. We're still fighting Vietnam at the time, right? So in the military, you're fighting the last one you fought. So we're assaulting a village. It's over, it's fun, we think we've graduated, it's done. Well, we had to take our casualties and walk 3 miles over the top of the mountain. And 2 miles of that was with CS gas without any face mask. There was nothing left in any of us, and what kept us all going was each other. And could you imagine going through 12 weeks of hell only to quit at the 11 and a half hour? That was it. You just had to do it. So then I got out of the Marine Corps, and I wanted nothing to do with the Marine Corps. I wanted nothing to do with the military. I was starting to have a spiritual awakening. I wanted to be a very peaceful, non-aggressive, quiet monk. And I began meditating, did a lot of meditation for a lot of years. And anytime that the feeling of intensity came up, I didn't know, I'm not going to look at that. And then I realized that I was denying a whole huge part of myself. And that for better or worse, I'm a warrior. And that there's no squelching that. So then I'm like, well, how do you turn that? How do you turn that intensity to an internal practice? And so, and that's really what I wanted to talk about today. So, oh man, I skipped way ahead here. Okay. That's awesome. I just have to catch up with myself. It happens. Okay. So I took this definition out of Wikipedia because it's in line with sort of how I think. The term spiritual warrior is used in Tibetan Buddhism for one who combats the universal enemy, which is self-ignorance, the ultimate source of suffering, according to Buddhist philosophy. A heroic being with a brave mind and ethical impulse. The spiritual warrior's practice is that which helps other beings with wisdom. This is the Bodhisattva ideal, the spiritual warrior who resolves to attain Buddhahood in order to liberate others. That's a very high ideal. Maybe someday I can be one of those, but right now I'm just me, just a guy. So I threw myself into being a spiritual warrior, just like take that intensity and go with it. I had always thought that spiritual awakening would be, like that picture I showed you, I'd be just sitting there. I'm not cool, I'm not in pain anymore. And it wasn't like that. It seems like it should be that way, but the truth will set you free, but will make you miserable first. Or you'll make yourself miserable with the truth is the more apt way to put it. So I did a lot of different practices over the years. And I was in a cult. I went from the Marine Corps, hey, I want to be free, to I'm going to join a cult. I didn't know I was doing that, but the guy seemed like a cool dude. His name was Rama. He had a PhD in literature, so he was a lot more educated than I was at the time. And he had a good game going. And here's what happened. I'm sitting in my first meditation with him. There's about 1,000 people in the room. Wow. And it's in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a theater. So it might not have been 1,000. I might be overstating 600-700 people. And it's full. And I'm sitting there. Who is this guy? And I'd been involved with EST at the time. And he was late. And if you've ever done S training, you know that late is a big no-no. And so I'm pissed. Like, why aren't you being responsible for your time and my time? Why are you wasting my time? And then he walks up on the stage, and he's a big, goofy-looking, curly-haired college professor-looking guy. And he starts talking, and I'm enraptured by him immediately. He's saying some really powerful things. And then we meditate. And so I'm thinking, oh yeah, we're going to meditate. I've done Vipassana before, so it'll be fun, we'll meditate. And he's playing some music. It's Tangerine Dream, so it's very spiritual music and kind of cool. and he's doing darshan with everybody. So one person at a time, he looks at each person. And I can, as he's doing this, I'm feeling like an intense amount of energy fill the room. And I'm seeing aura lights everywhere. And I'm seeing like his eyes are red. And this is like, and I'm very into it, because I'm not really paying attention to what my mind's telling me at the time. This is happening, he's getting closer and closer and closer to looking at me, and I feel the intensity, the intensity, the intensity, the intensity. And then he looks at me, and we make eye contact, and it looked like red light coming out of his eyes like this, and it hit me. And the next thing I knew, I was out of my body. And then I came back, and I was in terror. I had no idea that anything like that could happen. I was so far outside of my reality that, wow. And what I wanted to do was get up and run out of the room screaming. What I did was I took some deep breaths, and I decided I'm going to stick around and learn whatever this is. So 6 years later, I learned that 6 years. It was a great time. I got my IT career because of it. I was on my way to being a philosophy professor. I ended up being a computer programmer. So all in all, it was a fair swap. And I learned a lot. And I learned about well, I learned that I will not kneel, I will not bow, I will not be ruled. Period. And that's an ongoing lesson for me. Because just when I think that I've sorted all that out, it comes back around to a deeper level. So, and then I just go with that. And so, when I left this group, I went to the Himalayas. That's
Wow.
okay. I laugh about it too. Well, actually, what I did is I always wanted to go to India. And what had happened is I was living in New York at the time, taking Westchester County, and I was taking the train into the city because I was between computer programming jobs, and I was looking for a job. I was also reading a book called A Journey in Ladakh. And I'm reading this book, and it's all about this guy's spiritual journey into the Himalayas of India, going to the monasteries. And by the time I got off the train in Manhattan, I had totally changed my mind. I was not going to go look for a job. I'm going to India. So I went and bought a ticket. It was leaving the next day. I went home and got my passport and got it. And the next morning, before I left, I got it stamped at the Indian consulate in New York. Flew to Delhi, India. Was completely overwhelmed by the intensity of being in Delhi, India, and just like, there's way too many. I was living in New York, and I'm like, there's way too many people.
Delhi, oh my God.
And so I went to Ladakh. I got on the first bus and went to Kashmir. Then I went up to Ladakh and was there for a while. But then I ended up in Varanasi on the Ganges River. And meditating every day the whole time I'm there, having a fantastic, challenging time. And I get to Varanasi, and I walk to the burning ghats. The burning ghats is where people who die are cremated. They say in Varanasi, if you die in Varanasi, you don't have to incarnate here anymore. So a lot of people who are sick come to Varanasi to die and to be cremated there. And I'd heard that, and I'd seen for myself that a lot of people would sit in the burning ghats in the cemetery, essentially, to meditate on the transitory nature of life and death. So I thought, that's a really good idea, I'm gonna do that too. So one night, it's about midnight, and I'm sitting, you and me away from, on some step meditating, and there's somebody being cremated right there. And one of the things that they do as part of the ritual is they come with a stick and they crack the head open at a certain point. And the reason why is they believe that the soul leaves the body at that point and they go to the Brahma Loka. So I'm sitting there meditating, and bat, crack, and literally, please don't get grossed out, I get gray matter all over my leg. And I went, and it was warm. And I had this final thought, I was meditating, I had this final thought, if that had been anywhere else at any other time, I'd probably be vomiting right now. And then I started meditating, and it all went away. Everything, life and death, went away. And as it was going away, I felt like I was dying. It was literally ego, death, and my mind was screaming, "You're effing dying right now. Stop it." And I just let that go too. And for whatever reason, I was able to do that. So for me, that first experience of what they call samadhi was very life and death, very intense. And I think that I had so many good people that I grew up with as a Marine and things like that gave me the courage to face it. And then over and over again, through the years, that has happened. I went to, from there I went to southern India and met Sai Baba. And I was sitting there with Sai Baba, thinking, I could just live here. It was paradise. It was November. It was 75 degrees. The breeze was blowing bugs. I mean, it's beautiful ashram. It's his birthday at the time. There's people there singing bhajans all night long, and I'm singing bhajans all night long. I'm having a great time. And several days later, probably a week later, I'm sitting in meditation, profound, just in bliss. And I have this thought. And the thought was Mark Twain's story of the boat captain that died and went to heaven. And he gets there, and St. Peter gives him a harp and gives him some wings. Go sing praises to God. So he goes up there and he's sitting, doing his thing for a few days. And he's bored out of his mind. So he gets back down and goes to St. Peter, hey, I gotta go back to Earth. So I'm sitting there in all this bliss and ecstasy, remembered that story. And I was like, oh, shit.
Why that one?
I can't do this. I have to go back. So I came back. And there's a lot of other stories I could tell, but the feeling I'm trying to create is a sense of warrior. And I think one of the more intense experiences I had, and I'll close it up after this one, is I decided to take ayahuasca in ritual. So we did an ayahuasca ritual. And as I'm coming into it, I'm seeing a snake. Beautiful, beautiful snake. Black and white. And with the face of a woman. Beautiful woman. And she's talking to me. I don't remember what she's saying too much at this point. Suddenly, I really come on, and it's like rainbow snake. And I can see the clear beauty of every scale on its arm towards the rainbow. And she's talking to me. And at some point she says to me, are you ready to face your greatest fear? Why? No, I'm not. And she says, then what are you wasting our time for? And I said, good point. So I said, okay, let's do this. Let's get it done. All of a sudden, it's like I'm folding through my consciousness is feeling like a book. And I'm going back and forth through pages, and it's happening really fast, and all of a sudden it's like, there's your greatest fear. And I look, and here's my greatest fear. Completely unconscious, completely in the shadow, didn't even know. Who knew? But what it was, and it informed so much of my spiritual journey, and it was this, that I was already dead, that I was already in hell, suffering for a crime I no longer remembered, and that this whole dream, this whole world I'm living in, was, I've been in hell for so long, I've gotten strong, my mind gotten strong enough to create this dream so I wouldn't have to think about hell anymore. And suddenly, it's like, shit, the dream's coming to an end. And she says to me, so you want to look and see? There's the door, walk through the door. Excuse me, I said I wasn't going to. And I'm like, well, if that's what it is, so the question is, if the truth sucks, do you still want to know it? And I decided, well, if the truth sucks, I still want to know it. So I walked through the door, thinking I was going to be back in hell, I'm hurting, and it was infinite light and infinite love. So imagine me, because this is how I kind of imagine it. There's the door, I put my head through the door, wow, it's infinite light. Let me check again. Are you sure? So I did that a few times, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then she says to me, you thought you were an apex predator. You're a consumable. And she ate me. And I surrendered to it. I just like, and it was ecstasy. So there's more to that story, but that leads to a very interesting topic. I was clearly on a psychotropic hallucinogenic drug. So great hallucination, great spiritual insight, what was it? Epistemically, who knows? Here's the thing that it showed me though, that my entire spiritual quest to that point in my life, the whole thing, wasn't really a spiritual quest. I was deluding myself. What I was really trying to do was avoid hell. And so I don't want to know the truth. I want to go on this really cool spiritual quest but never find myself, right? So I got over that. Well, maybe I did, right? Because it comes back around. But it was a freeing moment in my life. But it leads to epistemic questions about so many things. A little while ago, I mentioned my first samadhi experience. I've scoured the books, the spiritual books, for when you have such an experience. They all talk about it, and they define what it looks like as best they can. They all say you can't really define it, but okay. So you have the experience, you understand what they were trying to say. Then the very next question is, how do you know? Because if you want to know that you're not deluding yourself yet further, you have to ask the next question. So, which is, how do you know? How do you know? How do any of us know what we know? And basically, what they all say, it's unknowable. So it's a experience without content. I don't know how to say that. And there's no knowable way. And yet, if you're honest with yourself, something in you wants to know. It's not enough that it makes your life better, I don't think. Maybe it is for some people. It isn't for me, because it's great to feel great, still be deluded. But then, I always run into something else. So I've always been a person that asks the next question. And the next question is, and I've been stuck on this one for years, how can I know? And it's a question that moves me on, but it's not a question that stops me or makes me feel bad. It's just like, I recognize the limitations of knowledge in this human box, because I sort of I've come to look at things, and this is just don't take it too literal. I see things like the earth. There's no world out here. There isn't a world outside. It's frequencies, it's energy, it's movement, it's vibration. Our bodies, our body, the suit is kind of like a really, really super high-tech virtual reality system that interprets, and we all kind of have a very similar operating system, so we're all sort of interpreting things the same way, but there's really no one out there. And I'm not really here either. It's just vibrations and frequencies. And yet here I am, and you are. So it's that. It's a very Zen sort of thing. So that's my next thing, is just to keep doing, just going. And I think I talked enough. Did I talk enough? Yeah.
You're doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that. That's my view of warrior spirit. It's a view. It's not the view. I feel honored, deeply honored to know all of you, because we all help each other on our journey. I feel deeply honored the people that have been in my life, even the ones that didn't turn out so well, like my friend Rama. You know, I learned so many great things from him, and you know, by being the person he was, who's passed now, he made me step up into my own power. It was like I kept beating against that rock, and pretty soon it was like, no, I am me, period, and nobody else gets to control me. That's I'm it, right? And by doing that, that was a great gift. That was a great gift to me. So, warrior spirit. Yes, sir.
I have a question. When you go into your meditations, there's two worlds, one with eyes open, the other with eyes closed. Do you find yourself going into a field? I'm just sharing what happens to me is I go to this field and I begin to see a new.
That happens.
Is that part of your story?
That happens. Here's a way I have experienced it, because it's never the same
It's
twice.
different, right?
It's never, well, sometimes it is, but it's never the same twice. So sometimes I'll do an eyes open meditation, and I recognize that this samsara, this world, is absolutely no different than the underlying ground of reality, the light, whatever we want to call it, God, whatever that is. That there is no separation. The separation kind of sometimes feels like a coating over the top of an infinite reality, like a wave, or a wave, one wave in an infinite sea. And sometimes that extends to having experiences of other dimensions, other worlds, other beings. I just keep meditating. It's just all part of it. Sometimes they'll show up and say hi. How you doing? How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
When that guy red eyeballed you and you said you went out of a body from that place,
Yeah.
there's the time that your body was at, the time that you experienced when you went out of body. Could you say that it was a noticeable difference in time that you were away?
Time and space.
Understood? From your perspective, could
from
you
my
state how far you felt out or away in time?
Moments.
Template?
Moments. It was, boom, I was literally on top of the ceiling, looking down over the whole, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm out of my body.
Mm-hmm.
It was, then I'm back, and I'm like, shit, I think I was just out of my body. And it was fairly brief, but the intensity of the energetic hit was completely unexpected. It was almost like I felt punched, and you know, and it was like a moment of disillusion in my ego, and I have no reference point for that at all. I'd heard about such things, but I didn't have any context for it, and it was a truly frightening moment in my life.
It sounded to me, Mark, that when, you know how the eyes, that we call them the windows of deep into our soul, and if somebody really connects deep into your soul by just a piercing of the eyes, because it was an eye meet, right?
Yeah,
That-
yeah,
So he saw your soul.
oh, yeah, yeah.
And you
Yeah.
acknowledge that he saw your soul.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. It was very deep, it was very profound and very powerful. And it was interesting. And so I was hooked for 6 years. I was like, because, you know, I was young and I thought, well, any meditator would be a nice person, of course. And clearly a person with a lot of power that could do that, or really good hypnosis. Have a stunning question. Pick your poison.
So Mark, the realm of the knowledge of knowledge is, to me, a very powerful place to be.
Yeah, I think Socrates says, my only knowledge is that I know nothing. I paraphrase it a little bit, but yeah. I feel like that a lot, maybe it's because I get old.
So when you said that it was a meditation and there was like a shell and the two worlds were finally accepted the shell, I saw it as being in an M&M world.
I could go with that, I could go with that, yeah. It's a little bit
Plain or peanut?
more. It's hard to describe because it's a little bit more
Plain or
diffuse than
peanut?
that, but that works, yeah.
M&M
I like the chocolate too, the chocolate.
Exactly, the chocolate. I want to have the chocolate side.
Yeah, I was just wondering that when you had that experience, did you feel he was the catalyst for it to happen, or that it really was within yourself?
In my and at that moment, I felt like he was the catalyst, but the experience was clearly within myself. It was a very subjective experience, you know. So it's one of those, because all subjective experiences, like other people say they, you know, have those kind of experiences, but it's still like, what is the truth content of that experience? Is it a delusion that I'm having? Was it like samadhi? You meditate for 20 years, my God, something's got to happen. So finally your psychology just says, yeah, we'll give you something, right? Or is it an actual samadhi experience, and how would you know?